The abandoned train station loomed in the moonlit night, a skeletal structure with rusted tracks that seemed to stretch into oblivion. Alex, a solitary traveler carrying the weight of her own darkness, stood on the desolate platform. The air was thick with an unsettling stillness, interrupted only by the occasional distant howl of a far-off creature. From the shadows emerged the haunting sound of a train whistle, mournful and distant. The ground beneath Alex's feet rumbled as the midnight train materialized from the obscurity. Its skeletal frame, a relic of forgotten times, seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. The conductor, a figure draped in a tattered uniform that whispered of untold stories, stood on the platform. His eyes, deeper than the night itself, met Alex's with a knowing gaze. "Welcome aboard," he uttered, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken sorrows. With trepidation, Alex stepped into the train's emptiness. The conductor's gaze followed her, a silent acknowledgement of her presence among the condemned souls this train carried. The doors closed behind her, sealing the pact between the living and the departed. The interior of the midnight train was almost ethereal in its emptiness. The only sound was the rhythmic clatter of wheels on tracks, echoing through the hollow carriages. The dim, ghostly light revealed an almost spectral landscape within. Alex chose a seat in the almost empty carriage, surrounded by an eerie silence that amplified the weight of her own thoughts. The ghostly figures, the tormented souls confined to this spectral vessel, lingered in the shadows. Their faces bore expressions of perpetual anguish, each one a testament to a life cut short or a destiny unfulfilled. The train began its journey into the unknown, hurtling through the desolate landscape. Alex, seemingly the only living passenger among the spectral, felt the eyes of the ghostly figures follow her every move. The conductor moved silently through the carriages, a guardian of the condemned, while the train's wheels whispered the secrets of the tormented souls it carried. As the midnight train pressed on, the spectral landscape outside shifted between realms, forgotten towns and mist-shrouded fields flickering in and out of existence. Alex, caught between the living and the departed, couldn't shake the feeling that this journey held a significance beyond the boundaries of the tangible world. The midnight train continued its relentless journey through the desolate night. Alex, the lone living passenger in this spectral convoy, gazed out of the foggy window. The landscape morphed, a kaleidoscope of forgotten memories and twisted destinies. As she peered into the shifting darkness, the ghostly figures, their features distorted by the ethereal glow, pressed against the misty windows. Their eyes, vacant yet haunting, held a shared torment that transcended the boundaries of life and death. The conductor moved silently through the empty carriages, a wraith-like figure tending to the condemned souls. Alex, her solitude accentuated by the ghostly emptiness around her, felt a peculiar connection with the tormented spirits. Each passing moment unraveled a tapestry of sorrows, regrets, and unfulfilled dreams. The train hurtled through an abandoned town, its skeletal structures and shattered windows reflecting the decay of both the living and the departed. The ghostly figures in the train mirrored the town's desolation, their spectral forms flickering like candle flames in the wind. In a distant carriage, Alex noticed a figure she hadn't seen before, a woman with hollow eyes and a presence that seemed to beckon Alex closer. Compelled by an unseen force, she ventured through the empty corridors, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the ghostly silence. The woman, a specter with a visage etched in perpetual sorrow, extended a translucent hand. Alex hesitated, the chill of the spectral touch sending shivers down her spine. The woman's eyes conveyed a plea, a yearning for understanding that transcended the confines of spoken language. With a spectral whisper that resonated through the train, the woman conveyed her story, a life cut short by betrayal, dreams shattered like glass, and an eternity of wandering in the limbo of the midnight train. Alex, overwhelmed by the weight of the woman's narrative, felt a surge of empathy that bridged the gap between the living and the departed. As the train plunged into a realm where time seemed to fracture, the ghostly figures pressed closer to Alex, their silent cries and lingering regrets echoing in her ears. The train's wheels, now a cacophony of despair, carried the collective anguish of those on board. A symphony of horror crescendoed as the midnight train hurtled through the shadows, its wheels screeching in a nightmarish cadence. Within the carriages, an oppressive dread thickened the air, foreshadowing the climax of this spectral journey. As Alex grappled with the tormenting whispers, the train plunged into an abyss of absolute darkness. The ghostly figures, now grotesque specters of despair, pressed closer, their ethereal fingers reaching for her. At the forefront stood the woman with hollow eyes, her spectral visage a silent scream etched in perpetual agony. Abruptly, the train's ghastly silence shattered. A dissonant wail reverberated through the carriages. Each ghostly figure transformed into a nightmarish entity, their tortured forms convulsing in grotesque contortions. The train itself seemed to writhe, its structure warping and groaning, echoing the tortured souls within. A flickering light emerged at the end of the corridor, the conductor, his eyes ablaze with otherworldly intensity. His voice, a guttural blend of despair and malevolence, echoed through the train, a chorus of tormented souls converging into an infernal symphony. "This is the end of the line," the conductor intoned. As Alex recoiled from the approaching horror, the train's interior twisted into a surreal nightmare. The walls pulsed with sickly hues, and the windows transformed into portals revealing hellish landscapes. Faces contorted in agony pressed against the glass, their mournful wails amplifying the cacophony. In a sudden jolt, the train screeched to a halt. The flickering light at the end of the corridor extinguished, plunging the carriages into impenetrable darkness. Alex, paralyzed by suffocating dread, felt a cold breath on the back of her neck. A blood-curdling scream echoed through the train, a symphony of terror emanating from the very walls. The ghostly figures converged on Alex, their tortured faces inches away. The woman with hollow eyes, her spectral form now a twisted entity, reached out with spectral fingers that grazed Alex's skin. Just as the horror reached its zenith, the train disintegrated into a blinding light. A deafening silence followed, broken only by the fading echoes of tormented souls. As the light subsided, the train persisted, its skeletal form now suspended in the moonlit night. But Alex, once a living passenger, had vanished from the midnight train. The air hung heavy with an eerie stillness, the remnants of the spectral journey lingering in the shadows. The ghostly figures, now eternally bound to the desolate platform, whispered their sorrowful laments into the void. And so, the midnight train, a vessel for the condemned, endured. It stood as a haunting relic in the abandoned train station, bathed in the moon's ethereal glow. The echoes of the journey resonated in the shadows, revealing only the lingering enigma of a passage that transcended the boundaries of the living and the departed. The train, now silent, awaited its next passenger,